Merry Christmas, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about some of the fish and plans I have for 2025 and breeding for profit. As well, I want to thank you for spending your Christmas day with me. I'm so thankful you're part of this community. If you're not already part of the community, hit the subscribe button down below. We have weekly uploads and we do a lot of fish breeding, as you can see by the rack behind me, with plans for expansion in the future. So today, I want to take you through a few things I'm doing with my Rainbowfish. Get ready for some rare Plecos I'm going to be bringing in, as well as discuss my Corydoras catfish and my plans for them in the coming months, because they're giving me a little bit of trouble, and I'm thinking I might need to pivot a little bit, just for now. With that being said, let's get on with it. We're going to start right off with my Psudomugils down below. Right here is my tank of Psudomugil Signifers. They're chasing each other around. They're going to be spawning throughout the day. Right now I have 2 reverse trios, which is 2 males and 1 female, because that's all there were when I first picked them up, but I could not miss out on these guys. So I've had them for maybe a month and a half, almost 2 months now. I have my first batch of fry in this tank right here. If we open this up, we can start looking down the top. You're able to see a few of the really small fry that are coming around, swimming around the top. I still have a lot of eggs hatching down low. They should all be hatched probably within the next week and a half or so, and they're going to be growing. Some of them are actually big enough to already start with baby brine shrimp, but I feed this tank Daphnia daily. If you guys are culturing any of these fish that have extremely small, like eyelashed fry, you want to make sure you get yourself some Daphnia. I'm going to put an image of my culture right here. If you guys want a video on how to culture Daphnia and how to feed these little guys, let me know in the comments below. But today, I've started my second batch of Psudomugil Signifers in this tank right here. The way I have this rack set up, I have my main colony in the center with the heater, and I have 2 grow outs on the side, which are a little bit cooler, but they get some of the heat from the middle tank, so that's why these are taking a little longer to hatch. But this is batch 1, and this is going to be batch 2, which I've already pulled a lot of eggs for, but right now we need to go and pick out some eggs. So let's do that, and I will see you when we start pulling eggs. I keep 2 mops in my Psudomugil tank. We're going to pull out the first one now. It's my sinking mop. This one has seemed to be their favorite as of recently. I'll pull almost 2 to 3 times the amount of eggs from this, and it just is great. So when you're hatching out these Signifers or any of the blue eye species, I put these spawning mops in, I'll wring them out, and I'll put them in their little tray. I'll pull the floating one out too, just so we can get them side by side. Yeah, all you gotta do is give them a little wring out. You don't really have to worry about crushing the eggs or anything. The eggs are pretty strong, and the yarn gets you enough of a buffer. You're just pulling that water out so you're not getting it all over the place. Starting off with our floating mop, let's bring it up here to you guys. We got to just start peeling through, and you can see one of the eggs right there. It's clear, which means it's been fertilized. If this egg was white or cloudy, I just throw it back in the parent's tank, because that's no good. So what I'll do, I'll pick an egg off the mop, keep count of it. This is egg number 1. You can see it right on the tip of my finger. How cool is that? And all I do is I drop it in the tank. I just let it incubate from there. The only thing in that tank are those eggs. So we're going to keep combing through this, see if we can find any more. We might find little pieces like this. If you can see this right here. The parents found their way to this egg and munched on it, had a little snack. But we can see around it we've got 1, 2, 3 more eggs. That's 4 in total. So I'll get through all these, and I'm going to get back to you with the final count of eggs that we've gotten today. Okay, I'm going to stop the time lapse real quick, because just look at all the eggs in here. These guys went crazy. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 10 eggs here alone, which is just about how many were in the floating mop. So I think it might be because this one is about 300 strands of yarn, and the other one's only around 200. So I think the thicker you do it, these guys have a harder time finding their eggs to eat them. So, yeah. Back to counting. Altogether, we had 32 eggs just in a day of having these eggs being laid. And that's only with 2 females. Preferably, I'd rather have almost, 6, 7 females with like 3 males with a nice group of 10. Because then I'd be pulling much more eggs per day and each batch would be a lot bigger. If we look in here and we get really close, you can see some of these black dots are actually eggs. This black dot right here is a little fish that's almost fully developed. Now these guys, their eggs take about 2 to 3 weeks to hatch depending on the temperature. And the temperature in these side tanks is only about 71, 72 degrees, where the center tank's 76. I would love to heat the room, but I just don't have the funds or the insulation for that. In the future, when I'm really trying to produce these guys, if they prove to be worthwhile, because I love the blue-eyed species, I'd be having these tanks at a much hotter temperature, and they'd be able to grow a lot faster, incubate a little bit faster, and kind of get that lifespan kicking. But for now, you can see that the eggs are hanging in here. I have a lot down at the bottom, and I'll be putting eggs in here for another 2 weeks or so, because once fry start hatching out, I try to start putting eggs in a new place, which next stop will probably be a breeder box connected to this grow out, so that by the time they're big enough to move from the breeder box into a grow out, I'll have sold this batch of fry. So yeah, that covers the Pseudomugils. Let's get on to the rare Pleco tank I plan on setting up. Alright, we come over here to my workstation. You can see a lot of these piles. I made a mistake when cutting all of these, and I accidentally cut one too short because my saw stop moved a little bit. So I need to go back and recut a lot to be a tiny bit shorter. But these are Pleco hotels. So these I have custom built for Hypensistrus, and I have 2 different levels. I have some shorter ones up top because this is just this is my prototype. I have more square ones where there's a little bit more space to move for some of the bigger ones, but I have some smaller thin ones for some of the more juvenile Plecos that might not be big enough to completely trap up one of them. So we're going to be adding this into our tank over here, because this is going to be where a colony of L134 leopard frog Plecos are going to be going. So in here, right now, I just have a bunch of swordtails and mystery snails that I bred out over the year, and they're only going to be for breeder points. I'm going to leave my small swordtails in here as ditherfish, because from what I've read online, those leopard frog Plecos love having a ditherfish above them. It makes them feel like it's safe to come out, that there's no predators, and once these swordtails get a little too big, I'll pull them out, and then I'm going to either add them to my main colony tank, which is going to be a bunch of my red swords and black mollies, or I'll sell them to my local stores or my local fish club. But these guys are just adorable. Look at these black swordtails that have grown up. I adore them. But I'm going to be pulling the hornwort out. I'm mainly just going to be leaving wood and my frog bit to just kind of cover the top of this, and we're going to take it from there. Now that we've caught all the adults out, I want to make sure that this tank is really nice and cozy for my new Plecos. One thing I'm going to be doing, if you guys saw me remove that sponge filter, I'm going to be adding a second sponge filter to this, so there's a little bit more water flow and oxygenation in the water, as well as some extra filtration, just because, Plecos poop a lot. So that's going to be the first order of business, getting that second sponge filter hooked up. Then I'm going to be getting everything kind of running in between. So I need to go cut some line and then add that filter in. One tip I'm going to have for any of you guys who want to breed for profit get yourself a big line of airline tubing. You never know when you're going to need it, especially when you're setting up extra tanks or you need to hatch stuff out. Having extra airline tubing on hand is so helpful. We're going to come over here. I've got my airline tubing. It needs to be connected up to my air manifold. So all my air is run through this one pump, comes up to this, and every single airline gets its own individual valve. So this we're just going to slide on here. Push it on. It's nice and snug. And I'm just going to run it down the side. Keep it nice and easy, out of the way. It's going to run down the side, and I'm going to have a ton of slack here where I'll be able to move that sponge filter around and do really whatever I want with it. So I've got my line there. I've got my filter in this bucket with the log I'm also going to be adding back in once I put my caves back. Pop this guy right there. And for anyone who hasn't hooked up one of these before, all I'm going to do is stick the airline in there. So yeah. So we're going to get all our stuff in and arrange the tank how we want it. I want to be able to see our caves so that if any of our fish spawn, we're able to take a look at them. Make sure no one's under here. And we'll still have to do a massive water change after this. One thing I like to do when setting up Pleco tanks is add a little bit of a shy cave. So I'll put this one back here and off to the side where I can still see the entrance to see if any male is flirting or fanning eggs in there. But he'll feel like he's a bit more covered and less exposed. So it might feel like a bit of a safer place to spawn and raise fry. So that's just one little addition I'll add. So right there, we may add some more caves in the future as I pick more up if I see any on Marketplace. But that should be plenty. I'm only going to be getting 5 fish. And I have way more than 5 caves in there. I've got 2 caves for each fish. So I'll have plenty of space to move around. And the next thing I want to add back in is my driftwood, because driftwood is huge when setting up these Pleco tanks. It'll help them digest, it'll help the babies if any fry I miss. I plan on removing all the eggs, but you never know if I'll miss one. So we're just going to slide this right in the back. And I'm going to go grab another piece to add on the end with another piece of Anubias. This piece of driftwood I just had lying around from breaking down another tank, and it's got this nice hole right through the center. Then I'm going to pull some Anubias roots through, just so that this tank gets some plants, gets some filtration, more biomedia. Our plant's going to take time, get latched onto that. Besides making our tank look prettier, this is just going to make the Plecos feel more at home and more comfortable in their new environment. So, yeah, it's an awesome addition. Make sure you're adding driftwood to your aquariums. All it does is benefit you. Now let's do a big water change on this, pull a lot of that old water out, and there's going to be some nice fresh water that really won't be polluted for when we add our new Plecos in. Now, the last thing I'm going to do with this tank before it's ready for my leopard frog Plecos is I'm going to turn the heat up. Right now it was only set to about 74, but these guys like it a lot warmer. So I'm going to make sure that this tank is set to something a little bit warmer, like 80, so that when they're actually in here, they're more set up for success. I added these shells in here as a little homage to what the tank was originally for. We're going to get a nice handful of our frog bit in here, scatter it around. And just like that, our new leopard frog tank is set up. All that's left is to add the fish, and that'll probably be done in the coming weeks. So I feel like this was a very productive day with this tank. It looks great. And the last thing we have to talk about are our cories and what we're going to possibly do with them. All the mystery snails we pulled out of that tank for now are just going to go into my quarantine tank because that's got the most space for them. So they're all going to hang in here. I'm probably going to be bringing them into one of my local fish stores in the coming week. So that'll just be nice. I have the few that I want to hang on to. If I ever want to get more again, I've got a few throughout my other tanks that are getting nice and big, nice and mature. So I'll make that final decision tomorrow. All that's left is to go add these guys to their new home. We're upstairs in the Molly tank. This is just going to be mainly live bearers and my Hillstream loaches. But I want to add these orange swordtails and my one black swordtail because I think it's just going to be a really cool contrast. These two, while they're live bearers, they're different families, so they're not able to crossbreed. But we're going to see a lot of babies in here. We've already seen some baby mollies, and these swordtails should just add a lot of color to the tank. I'm also not worried about mixing water because it's all my water. The temperature is, I think, a degree apart, so... Finally, we have our Corydoras tank, and I love these guys. Corydoras, I've always had such a huge soft spot for them, and they're just such cool fish. But this tank, I don't know, they just don't want to spawn. I've been conditioning them like crazy. You can see my culture of blackworms right here. I'm constantly feeding them live blackworms, frozen bloodworms. They get baby brine shrimp each day to try to encourage them to feel like there's a lot of small food in the water that their fry will be able to eat as well. I'll do a 50% water change with cooler water right before it rains, all of what you're kind of supposed to do with them. I do have pretty hard water, so I think that might be one of the things that's kind of holding them up. But other than that, this tank's been going really well. They seem to really enjoy it. They come out a bit more. They eat a lot, but I need space. Like I said, this whole setup is meant to breed for profit. Below them are Celestial Pearl Danios with some Corydoras habrosus in the tank next to it, which will just be CPD grow out above with the habrosus below, hopefully colony breeding. But I just haven't had any luck. So what I'm either going to do is convert this tank over to a grow out for more rainbows, or maybe I'll do a betta breeding project and grow out the fry in here, and we'll see what that does, because bettas are super cool. This just leaves me space for a grow out. I just need to go through and pull the cories. I'm going to give them a few more attempts, probably through the end of January, and then I'm going to reevaluate what I'm going to do with them, because I do need that tank producing to make this all kind of worthwhile. But yeah, breeding for profit's the main goal with this setup, and along our journey, each one of these vlogs, I'll kind of update you on the projects I'm working on and what kind of profit we're able to turn with those fish. So thank you for spending your Christmas with me if you're watching this on Christmas Day. Happy holidays to everyone, and thank you for being part of this community. If you're not already part of the community yet, hit the like button and subscribe button down below. Leave me a comment. I love responding to all of you and hearing your takes, especially when it gets me advice. So if you guys have any advice for breeding these bronze Corydoras, drop it in the comments below. They're supposed to be the easiest cories to breed, and I'm feeling a little discouraged. So with that being said, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.